our next guest, Rosa Clemente. I have been a long follower of her work and her activism, her run for vice president, all the things that she's done. I am especially excited to talk to her today about her work with the new movie Judas and the Black Messiah. Sister Clemente, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Ben, for having me on. I'm good. I'm just tired. Haven't slept in a week, but I'm good.
Yeah, and considering the amount of success and press and just the fervor around this movie, I really want to double back and thank you again for joining us this early. I would like for you to speak to us about the film. All of us have had a chance to see it on this show. It spoke to me at levels that sometimes I try to suppress, but the movie just kind of tapped right into the revolutionary spirit that is inside, I think, of everybody who has been marginalized in this community. But more than just our individual journeys with regard to our own struggles and radicalism, it is a story to me of a young man who had his finger on the pulse of the problem in this country. And in this film, I think it beautifully demonstrated the struggle that not only existed then, but also it felt like there was a direct tie to what we're experiencing now. Could you just talk about the film in general and your work with it?
Yeah, so Judas and the Black Messiah has been in the works for 3 years. We started in 2018. This is, I tell people, this is not a biopic. It's not a documentary. It's a movie. It shows the last 16 months of Fred Hampton's life. It also shows the women that were a part and leaders in the Black Panther Party for self-defense as well. In it, you also get an understanding of what Chairman Fred began, the Rainbow Coalition. He began it when he met Chacha Jimenez of the Young Lords Party, when the Young Lords was still a gang. He encouraged Chacha to move the gang into what it would eventually become the Young Lords Party. And then along with the American Indian movement and the White Patriots and the Brown Berets to some level, that would have been raised a lot more if Fred had lived, as well as Deputy Mark Clark, so this is the history I studied too as an academic. So I've known Fred for over 20 years. I've obviously known what happened to his father, Mark Clark, and the survivors of that assassination attempt. And, some people say it's seen through the eyes of William O'Neill, which could be true. Shaka Kane was very honest from day one that there was no way a movie was just going to be made about the beginning of Fred Hampton's life to the end. The thing with Fred Hampton, though, is that he started organizing at 13 and was leading a chapter of the NAACP at 14. Fred became so dangerous to the counterintelligence program. At that time, J. Edgar Hoover had already said the two national security threats in the United States of America internally were the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and then second, the Puerto Rican independence movement. So I think when COINTELPRO and Hoover saw that the Young Lords and the Black Panther parties were working, particularly in Chicago, because they were also still always working with street organizations to have the street organizations join into an organized force for movement. Fred becomes dangerous when he creates a Rainbow Coalition, but the movement itself becomes dangerous because what people always forget is super convenience when people want to use the Black Panther Party for a show or a concert or as a fashion statement, that the Black Panther Party for self-defense, the Young Lords, the White Patriots, the American Indian movement, these were socialist organizations that also were paramilitary organizations. Like, you weren't going to run up on any of them without them having the weapons that they needed to defend themselves. Just like that shootout you see, for folks who haven't seen it, those shootouts were happening every day, whether in Oakland, Brooklyn, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Those were common because that's how the cops, had the green light basically to assassinate who they wanted to, if not capture and incarcerate them.
Right, right, and we just spoke with Professor Jared Ball about that part yesterday. About it wasn't just the assassination, but it's the political imprisonment that really extends to our present day.
Right
And I
now.
was
Yeah.
exactly right now as I was watching the film. Actually, before I watched the film, before I knew that you were a part of the film, there were people who had questions about what it was going to be, right? Like a year ago when the first advertisement came out, marketing pieces started coming out, or 6 months ago, I lose track of time in the pandemic, but people were concerned that it would not be true to the revolutionary spirit of the Black Panthers or to the revolutionary spirit of Fred Hampton. And then when I realized that you were a part of it, and then I saw that Fred Hampton Jr. was a part of it, like there is an essence of this film that, in my best estimation, is as true as any film movie could be in terms of what the Black Panthers were fighting for and who Fred Hampton was. Of course, it's not a documentary, but I feel like you guys poured everything that you could into maintaining the truth about what they were fighting for, both in terms of Black liberation and in terms of their political socialism and their 10-point plan. You guys really spoke to that. Could you speak very quickly about the tension that exists between revolutionaries presently and those who are using mediums like the movies or like books or like whatever else, other creative mediums that they could use to convey that revolutionary spirit?
Yeah, every elder I've spoken to in the last week, Black Panther elders and Young Lords elder, say that the movie was extremely hard for them to watch, as we know how it ends, but
Yeah.
also said that this was a necessary film in this time. Yes, there's been hardcore critiques. I mean, my comrade, Dr. Ball, being one of those people that has had a hard critique on it, you know. For me, I see it as a new tool in our arsenal to not just talk about Fred Hampton, but to talk about how, you know, Mark Clark, who was protecting him, you know, also was assassinated, that there were other Panthers there that lived, that Mother Akua and Jerry was obviously not supposed to live because their goal was to kill her so that Fred, the son, would not be born. And that didn't happen, right? So, like, they're assassinated on December 4th, 1969, and Fred Hampton is born December 29th, 1969, you know, so they didn't want Akua surviving, and whatever ancestors were in that room protected her from even one bullet, because there were 100 bullets that was shot in there, and the FBI and CIA and the Chicago police and the state police all collaborated. The second thing I tell people is, like, yeah, William O'Neill's a snitch for sure. You know, he was an agent, but he wasn't the only one. And right now, in some of the movements that I observe, I know who the snitches are. I've been pretty clear to younger folks. Like, I've seen that. I've seen that before. Part of it seeing before is my training in the Malcolm X grassroots movement, being on the ground. We prepare for this stuff because all movements get infiltrated, you know? So people have to understand that William O'Neill, I don't want to humanize him in that way, but he was a human. But after he did that he did the Eyes on the Prize, where he admitted that he was the FBI agent. 3 hours later, he was dead. And people say he committed suicide. Some of us think maybe the feds took him out right after he spoke, because William O'Neill had mad information on other movements that he had been tangential to. So I was like, yeah, he did that, which meant he would continue to speak out, which would not bode well for the FBI. So I don't think he stepped in front of that bus. I think that bus killed him. The person driving the bus.
There's so much to unpack in this, and I know your time is limited, but you said that you looked at this as a new tool in our arsenal, and that to me is really one of the reasons I reached out to you, because I feel the potential power in not only this movie, but in media and in the ability to tell these radical truths, just to tell them differently. Could you speak more about how you see this as a new tool in our arsenal?
Well, I mean, for me, the most thing that I hope people glean out of it is self defense. The protests this summer were great, but the hijacking of the narrative around peaceful protesters are not. The reality is, we all have the right to defend ourselves, and especially depending on what state, you know, and we're going to have to make a hard pivot because these white nationalists are coming after us with all types of military grade weaponry. And that people always say Black Panther Party, but they don't say the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And then lastly, as a Black Puerto Rican woman, I'm glad I had a role in making sure that the young lords were represented, you know, because for me, as someone, you know, I've worked now for 20 years around, quote, Black and Brown solidarity struggle. I don't really use the word brown, but around Pan-African and international and domestic struggle. But it is an excellent tool for all of us, particularly African-American and Puerto Ricans, to smash this narrative that all of a sudden, like, Latinos are the most anti-Black people in the world, and everything they do is anti-Black and they hate Black people. That's real easy for white supremacy to say that, as opposed to always look at our centuries-long solidarity with each other. And for Puerto Rico to even take it out of this movie, when we were struggling to get the U.S. Navy to get out of Vieques, it was not just Puerto Ricans. Al Sharpton got arrested and spent time for protesting with us. His wife got arrested and spent time. I bring that up not tangentially, and you know, there were many more people than Reverend Sharpton and his wife that came together with us around this goal of getting the U.S. Navy out, and vice versa. There's never anywhere you're going to go in this country at a protest for our people, for Black people, that you're never going to see Mexicanos and Puerto Ricans. You're never not going to see us because we've been working together. So what I tell people using this film is, like, we also have to break this white supremacist narrative that keeps us divided for the benefit of them. You know, and I think the film is very useful. I said I welcome the love and I welcome the critiques based in principle, but what I don't welcome is people just hating on it, without any type of analysis, just because you say hating on everything. Like, we got people in our mix that all they want to do is complain and hate, but they don't want to offer solutions. This is just a tool. And hopefully the solutions that will move, particularly our younger people, forward in revolutionary struggle.
Rosa Clemente, there's so many more questions that I would love to explore with you, specifically with regards to not only this film, but also the nuances of the revolution in 2021. And you've been speaking to them so poignantly here, specifically with the division, the divide and conquer tactic that is so pervasive right now. Like, it is everywhere. And it's something that we have to fight back against with solidarity. But the idea that our biggest enemies are people from just a different part of the diaspora, right? Or our biggest enemies are not the people who are in seen so many times before.
Ben, can I just say one quick? Yeah. Can I just say one quick thing with that, because that's so important, right? What is the enemy is capitalism. What's going on in Texas is an abomination. It is complete failure of capitalism. The fact that 3 times more African Americans are dying of COVID, that 6 times more Latinos are dying of COVID, and that Native American communities are being decimated, their elders are dying, and they're losing their languages. We have to say Black capitalism don't work, Latino capitalism don't work, there's no compassionate capitalism. Socialism is the answer, and a Green New Deal. And if we don't see that right now, I love talking about identity. I love talking about filmmaking and all that. But capitalism is the enemy, period.
As I like to say, capitalism is the devil. And I absolutely agree with you. It is a level of, to think that we've created a system, sis, out of the very worst in human nature, greed. We have rooted an entire economic, political, imperialistic system rooted in the very worst of humanity, which is greed. Is there any surprise? Is there any surprise that Ted Cruz would jump on a plane and go to Cancun while his Of course not, because we reward.
Or Ben, is there any surprise of how Biden in less than 30 days already threw Latinos under the bus by continuing deportations, where he put out a memo yesterday? Honestly, Ben, you have one of the most best shows throughout the electoral process this time. But I don't understand how people thought that having a white president and a black vice president was going to change anything. There's 24,000 detainees right now that they're going to try to deport in the next month, and it's less than 30 days. And also, where's the money? Why are you trying to work with Republicans? How dare you work with Republicans? How dare you want to even have they should have no seats at the table. That whole party should be imploding. And these Democrats are doing what they always do, forgetting the people.
And forgetting the people, and I think, and as a result, it's a result of a truth that I think Democrats aren't ready to come to terms with. But it's the truth. Our leaders, no matter what side it's on, but particularly Democrats, they are more interested in preserving these institutions than they are preserving human life. Right? They're more interested in preserving the filibuster than just ramming everything through on behalf of the people. And because they have more interest in institutions than human life, no, we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be. I just wanted to I think we've given them enough time at this point, though. It's February 19th, and they've been in office long enough to have done something for the people. It's been right. I mean, it's time to put up or shut up, because I think what they're going to find really quickly is that, well, actually, no. And this is why I feel like the movie and media has to play a pivotal role in what has to change. Because, Rosa, I think, and help me with this. I know we're already over time, and you just let me know when you got to go. But I feel like the way they get away with this so much is because I don't think the people understand how valuable they are. I don't think they understand how valuable their own lives are. Because, I mean, that's just me trying to understand how we could see 500,000 people die in this country and we not rip this country down. Like, I don't physically understand in my heart, how is it that we could stand by and see our leaders on vacation while our people are struggling? And the only answer that makes sense to me is that maybe we as human beings don't understand how valuable we are. But I feel like a film like Judas and the Black Messiah, forgive me, and any film that can help convey not only the value of human life, but also the value of a revolutionary spirit, I feel like those are the only tools that we have left to actually move that paradigm.
Thank you, because I know you have to go to your next segment. I'll say this. The Judas in this is the federal government in the United States. That's who the Judas is. Okay, because William O'Neill was also young when he had charges and he had to make his decisions. They were wrong, but he did it. Second, as someone who really likes watching apocalyptic kind of stuff, I've been watching a show called Snowpiercer.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is exactly where we're heading, right? Like these deep freeze, but in it, only a certain amount of people survive on the train. And at the end, they call them the tailies, the working class, right? And there comes a moment in like one of the episodes where one of the young people's like, all we've seen is adults create disaster after disaster after disaster. It's time for revolution, and the young people are going to lead it. And I believe we're hitting that time if we don't make this hard pivot to demanding everything that won these folks the elections. If not, upend the whole 2-party, 3-party, whatever, the whole electoral political project is dead. It's dead as a doornail. What are we going to do about that? Organizing. That's all we can always do, is organize and create visual narratives that feed the movement as the movement feeds our cultural workers.
If I could just say one last thing, because we're actually it's not a next segment. We're going to throw it to our DJ and let him take us out of here and leave the people with a little bit of joy. But if I could just say one thing to you, sis, is that I feel like I want to thank you for taking it on the chin this week with regard to this movie, because I understand, and I may not understand at the level that you understand it, but I get it all the time, right? The questioning of our revolutionary spirit because we do X, Y, or Z, and those things are not readily approved of by those who, perhaps are more revolutionary than us, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But the reason I want to thank you is because The truth of the matter is that every single inch that we can move this ball towards understanding the real fight is a valuable one. Because I'm going to be honest with you. Growing up in the black church, what we had, our revolutionary spirit, was organizing boycotts in the 80s. My dad organized boycotts. We had to hide under the bed just in case the Klan came by in Mississippi, right? But it wasn't until I was 12 and I watched Malcolm X by, what's our brother?
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee.
That I realized that there was a bigger, broader, long historical perspective of why I felt the way I felt. And then when I saw Mario Van Peebles' version of Panther in 1995, I was 15. It also helped move that ball, and they were pivotal. So I want to thank you and everyone who was a part of this film. While it may not be the revolutionary vanguard film that everyone wants, I know for a fact that some 12-year-old or some 15-year-old watched that movie and they are going to be a part of the next revolution. So thank you for it.
Well, Ben, thank you. Thank you to you and your team and your work. Thank you for having me. You know, I stay doing the work. That's who I am. I'm going to keep doing the work and keep bringing younger people into it. So thank you again for having me and having really good discussions about this movie. I appreciate it so much, brother.
It's been our pleasure. Bless you, sis.